An almost perfect night of basketball. The most hysterical 10 minutes I've had. Tremendous effort. A dig inside the numbers. And NBA at its finest. Plus, a geeky numbers trade that's proved to be right. It's all next on a possibly extended version of Tip Off. Boom, 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 I love number 20. Boom, 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 Gordon Hayward's an assassin. Boom, 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 he rocked last night. Boom, 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 watching him get better is so cool. Boom, 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 cheetah. Boom, 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 boom. Hi there. That was a pretty cool win last night. That was awesome. Yes! Big time right there. All right, we got a lot to get into the win, but I promised this story, and I want to get to this story because it was truly, as many of my friends know, I was emailing them and texting them, and I was texting my wife like the play-by-play the whole time. So there's a coffee shop here in Houston that I go to all the time. I've actually started kind of mentioning these things on Yelp. I don't know if anyone cares, but I figure if anybody else you travel, maybe I can lead you the right direction. For most of you, probably not a coffee shop, but you can get a hot chocolate, whatever. So anyway, it's this cool place. It's right in downtown. There's this outdoor seating area, and as I walk up, there are these two guys that are sitting there, and one has a Dos Equis, and the other has a Bud Light. It's 8:45, 9 o'clock in the morning, and there's this beautiful woman sitting there as well. She's on her Apple computer working, and as I walk in, these guys have just begin to start talking her up. So I go order my coffee, bring it out, sit on the other side, and now these two guys are talking her up. And they're just sitting there. And I mean, you kind of wonder, like, what are these two dudes sitting here drinking a beer at 8:30 in the morning on a Wednesday? So they're like, they say to her, and they're pretty reasonable looking guys. It's not like, they don't have like teeth coming out in funny directions or anything. They're not like shady clothes. I mean, one's wearing sweats and a Dallas Cowboy shirt, and another guy's just wearing normal. I mean, they look fine. So they say to her, "Where are you from?" And she's like, "Well, I live here." And they're like, "Yeah, but you're not from here because you say you guys, not you all." So that was my first chuckle of the day. And she says, "Well, she's from," and she turns out she actually is from Seattle. And just for background on your story, just so you can get a kind of image who this is this woman who is on her. I talked to her later. She's on her way to Harvard for her master's degree in education. So these guys are talking to her, and she politely turns back and says, "Well, why are you guys here? Are you from here?" I couldn't hear where they were from. Well, we're here because we're dropping our sister off at the courthouse. She's got some business she's got to take today. We don't want to just sit there and wait for her all day. So we went and just grabbed some beer. We're going to walk around the city. There's a lot to do in this city. You can just walk around, drink beer, and see a lot of different stuff. Okay. So they're sisters at the courthouse. So this continues, and then the guy goes into this thing with her about, what you really should go do? There's a Hard Rock Cafe here. You can go to the Hard Rock Cafe and you can get a shirt that says Hard Rock Cafe, and then on the bottom it says Houston. And then when you go to other cities also, you can get those, and they can say Hard Rock Cafe like Las Vegas. I've got 3 of them. It's so cool because when I walk around, everybody knows where I've been. Come on, you got to be dying. So then her husband walks up, and the guy gets incredibly nervous. And instead of letting the story go, he proceeds to now go in full, deep Hard Rock Cafe t-shirt analysis mode, explaining to the husband what they were telling him that his wife should go do. This husband is wearing probably $200 sunglasses, really nice jeans. It's a businessman in Houston, and telling him that, yeah, you gotta go Hard Rock Cafe and you can get all these shirts. And he goes right back, I got 3. It's so cool because I got 3 of them, and it tells everybody where I've been. And I've been to Las Vegas, and I think I swear he said Cincinnati. And so anyway, I was dying. I don't know if it's as funny now as it was when I experienced it, but I was dying. It was so. And then they finally picked up their beers, took off. I talked to the nice lady for a while. She's a free spirit. parents are crazy or free spirits, so maybe she didn't think it was as funny as I did, but that was good comedy. Last night was almost the perfect night in the NBA for us. From a Warrior draft pick standpoint, Sacramento lost, Toronto lost, Cleveland lost. All the teams we need to have lose lost along the way. Detroit's the one we're worried about that I can't see them losing enough games. They didn't play last night. It's nice of Sacramento and Cleveland and Toronto to fully lose. Memphis beat Phoenix, which is good for us. Memphis is out of our reach. Oklahoma City lost, which is actually important because we need them to play every game. So San Antonio lost was important. We need them to play every game. And then we didn't quite get perfection when Minnesota came back from 20 down. They couldn't finish it off, and Portland did beat Golden State last night. But beggars can't be choosers. But even better was the performance of the Utah Jazz. As I was in the elevator last night with Tyrone Corbin, and we were listening to the on my phone to the Minnesota call, and he looked at me and goes, Jazz just need to win like they did tonight. And he's right. The Jazz, to some extent, while being on the outside in, still to some extent control their own destiny. If you just win enough games here, the other guys are going to lose some games. No one's that good. And be able to get it done. The Jazz effort last night, they started that lull, and there you were at that 6-minute timeout in the first quarter, having allowed 18 points already, and feeling like, oh my gosh, here we go again. And then Damari Carroll came out on fire, and the game changed. They just picked up the intensity. I've always felt that a lot of times, I'm sure Rocket fans are wondering about effort tonight. I thought the Rockets played pretty hard last night, but the NBA game sometimes is like a boxing match or like football, and that is, you just throw the first haymaker and get the other team on their heels, and when you do that, you're in control of the game, and that's what the Jazz did, and they pounded them and kept pounding them for almost all of the night, which really was the key to the whole thing, is how well they played. The Rockets made that run, got it to within 4. I think. Let me check my notes. Got it to within 4 with 6:18 left, and the Jazz answered it. But to some extent, the Jazz never allowed the Rockets back into the game. It's why you've got to play from ahead. The Jazz are a very good team when they play from ahead, partially because Al Jefferson, actually. It wasn't last night, but just in general, by the way, for all the things that I talk about in regards to Al being in his inefficiencies offensively, when we're ahead, the fact that you can go to him and know you're going to get points and it's only slightly below the league average means it's very unlikely that someone's going to come back and beat us. So in that circumstance, he's pretty good. The Jazz did some really interesting things last night. They protected the rim fabulously. The Rockets hit 15 of 28 shots at the rim, which is pretty low percentage. And then they defended the three-point line at 4 of 20. It felt as though they were changing the shots the Rockets were getting, but 23-pointers is about where the Rockets are, maybe a few off. They ran them off the three-point line well. And the rim, 28 shots, is about where they'd be. So what the Jazz did is they actually defended those shots well. The Jazz defense this year actually has done a really good job of forcing teams to shoot from different spots than they have in years past, and is much improved in that regard. The teams have just been making those shots, so we just need to toughen up our defense a little bit. I thought the game changed largely because Scola couldn't guard Millsap. The Jazz defense created a bunch of stuff, but on the offensive end, Scola couldn't defend Millsap. And then when the Jazz went to Millsap as the 3, Favors and Jefferson on the floor at the same time, you had Budinger and Chandler Parsons trying to go, and Chandler Parsons, a great defensive player, very similar to Gordon in that regard. And they tried to get him to defend Millsap, and they couldn't do that either. And when that happened, Paul's dominance in the first half, I thought, was really game-changing to everything that took place, because everything fed off of that for the rest of the night. The other one is the Jazz just played the game very differently. They only had 8 post-ups the entire night. On spot-up shooting, they hit their shots, namely Gordon, but 10 of 23 shooting. And then Millsap out of isolations, an area where the Jazz have been very poor. The Jazz hit 6 of 11 on their isolations, which is high for them. I mean, we're not a very good isolation team. We may be the worst in the NBA, actually, and more one of the worst spot up teams in the NBA as well. And we hit those shots. Gordon Hayward was really, really terrific last night. You just don't finish with box score lines of 29 points and 6 assists as a forward very often. They may classify him as a 2 guard last night with Tamari Carroll. But there aren't, I bet you if we ran a little search, there aren't a lot of guys that have exceeded that as a forward. Maybe he's a shooting guard, but those are huge numbers. To do it again efficiently on 14 shots, his three-point shooting is finally over 30% for the season. He defended Lowry pretty well, though I thought Lowry just got tired as much as anything else took place. Hasn't played a lot, and the Jazz were able to slow him down. But Gordon was just super. I mean, he's begun to play in the open court. He got to the free throw line for 7 free throws. He's just a fabulous player, and he is on a long stretch here of averaging about 17 points, 5 or 6 rebounds, 3 or 4 assists, and that might be his jump. I mean, I have a heart. Next year we're going to find out who he is. The third year with this amount of playing time this year. Next year we find out who he is. And I have a really hard time envisioning someone to be more than what he's been for the last 20 games. And maybe he is, which would just be incredible. Ron Boone and Tom Nasolke both buy into the John Havlicek comparison. Earl Watson has mentioned Jerry West, and as was just mentioned by Tom Nasolke last night as well. I mean, these comparisons are big time for a 9th pick of a draft, who is playing about as well as anybody in that draft right now. The Jazz defense, though, is the story last night, holding the Rockets down to 36% shooting. The pick and roll ball handler last night shot just 1 of 8. Dragic and Lowry, 1 of 8 shooting. They got to the free throw line, did some other things, but 1 of 8 shooting last night. Sorry, it's about to reset my computer. And that's the change. The Jazz held the Rockets to below 1 point per possession, which is hard to do. League average is 101 points per 100 possession. The Jazz have won 11 straight when they do that, and 15 of the 17 games this year when they do that. If you play defense in this league, you will win. Favors was on the floor for 25 minutes, I would point out. Really just overall fabulous performance last night. Final things I was going to add on to this. The trade. Very just subtle trade that went on during the offseason, but it's where numbers really should tell you something. Brandon Bass is a very efficient offensive player. Glenn Big Baby Davis is a very inefficient offensive player. They got traded for each other. At the time, it seemed like a no big deal. Basically, they got swapped. And I said at the time, that's a 5-win difference. And it seems like an awful lot for that to be a 5-win difference between those two types of players. But I think that's what it came out to be. I mean, really a big deal trade. And sure enough, look at Orlando. For all the Dwight Howard things and everything else everyone's talking about, and all these other off-the-floor excuses to what's wrong with that team this year, what's wrong with that team is that Brandon Bass scored at a higher rate than Glenn Big Baby Davis, and so now they have slipped. That's a huge part of it. It's funny how we get sidetracked with all those other emotions and all these other things. That's a huge part of why Orlando's gone from the 3rd seed to the 7th seed. And why the Celtics are now the 4th seed again. Celtics are tough right now. Chicago or Miami against the Celtics in the 2nd round. That's ugly. Indiana doesn't put fear in me quite the same way that Boston does right now if I'm an Eastern Conference team. Our playoff situation, 1.5 games out of 6th, 1.5 games out of 8th. Got to keep winning. New Orleans is playing really well. We'll talk about it tomorrow from New Orleans on Tip-Off. Have a good one. Bye, YouTubers.